All right, we're going to look at some advanced programming concepts in this video. First off, we're going to look at something called procedures, and then we're going to look at something called an if statement. An if statement is a conditional statement. But first, procedures. We can write little subprograms. In fact, in some computer languages, they're called subroutines or even subprograms. And in JAL, we call them procedures. And it's real easy to call these procedures again and again. I've got my JAL open here on my computer, and you can see that even program 0 is a procedure. Program 0 is a procedure that we can call over and over again, and we do that by pushing our buttons in the right sequence and starting that program. But for you can call certain procedures over and over again that you would like. Let's say you have a real fancy, here let's look at mine, we've got a real fancy light show here. All right, I've got 12 times over and over again. This loop, my blue LED and green LED and red LED and so forth, they flash for 12 times. Well, I think that's kind of a cool sequence of a light show. So I want to be able to call that again and again rather than writing this out all over and over again, and it makes for real long-looking programs. I can put this all in a little package and use it over and over again wherever I want. Now, in this version of JAL, the one for the College for Kids robot, to do a procedure, we need to put the procedure in a program called My Procedures. And the way you're going to find this, here I was on program 0, I'm going to go over to the Robot 2 Template tab and click on Includes. And then click on My Procedures. All right, and then the My Procedures program opens. I'm going to go back to my program 0. Here's my really cool light show, and I'm going to take that. It's from that 412 loop down to end loop, and I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. Now back to My Procedures, and I'm going to give a couple spaces here. And I'm going to paste that back in place. Now, this is in My Procedures. However, it will not work properly until we define this as a certain procedure. And the way we do that is just type in procedure, and of course you have to spell it right. You know it's spelled right when it turns bold or into a certain color. Now we need to name this procedure, and we can call this whatever we want. And I'm going to call my procedure Blinky. Having a little trouble typing here this morning. Okay? My procedure called Blinky is what's below here. So it's my 412 loop. And then when the procedure is over, we have to say, okay, well, this is the end of the procedure. So we're going to type in end procedure. Wow, real bad this morning. All right, so end procedure. Now, back in my other programs, I can call my Blinky procedure whenever I want by simply typing in Blinky. So now, if I was to run program 1, it would run Blinky, which is set up over here in My Procedures. So I don't have to write all this code over again. I can just say Blinky, and it's going to do that little routine. So, to review, a procedure is something, it's a small program that we can call over and over again. We need to set up that small program, we need to name that small program something, and then we can call that small program whenever we want by just typing in the name of that program, and that program will run. In this version of JAL, you set that up in My Procedures. And to set up a procedure, you need to say procedure and then the name of your procedure, then the word is. And then you put your procedure in, and it can be anything. It can be going forward, backward. All the different commands that you have can be set up as procedures. But you have to be sure to, at the end of whatever that procedure is, to put the end procedure. So once that's written, and you can put as many procedures as you'd like here in My Procedures, we could go down and put another procedure below this and call that as well. But then, when we want to call that procedure, for instance, in Program 1 here, we just type in the word, whatever we call that procedure, and it will do that procedure. Next, we're going to look at something called a conditional statement. A conditional statement is something, a procedure or lines of code that occur when something else occurs. And in the case of a robot, a lot of times that something else is something that happens in the outside world, like us pushing a button, for instance. All right? So what we're going to do here is in my Program 1, I'm going to start a forever loop. And I'm going to put end loop here at the end. I'm doing this because the switches have an effect here in calling these procedures, so I'm just going to get stuck inside this forever loop so my switches work outside of the switches that are calling these procedures. Okay, so as soon as I start Program 1, this forever loop is going to start, and we're just going to stay inside of this. Okay, so that's why we have to use that there. Otherwise, our microcontroller is going to be a little confused as to, well, if I'm pushing this switch, should I call Program 1 or Program 2 or 0 or whatever, or should I do this other thing over here that you're asking me to do, okay? So we're just going to start this forever loop, and it's going to get stuck in there, and then it's not going to be confused about what to do out here. All right, so yeah, we learned that a little bit earlier in class. So now we've got the forever loop, and we're going to use something called an if statement, and an if statement is very common across all computer programming languages, and it's used all the time here in JAL. We've got two different switches on our robot. We've got the switch that selects the different binary numbered programs. That's just called switch, and then there's another one called switch 2. And that switch is the one that starts the program. And I'm going to use that switch 2 with my conditional statement here. I need to say if switch 2 is on, and the way we signify on is with a 1, just like we learned with our binary counting, on is 1. And the syntax on this, in other words, syntax is what we have to put in so JAL understands it, is we say if whatever condition we want to meet, and in this case, switch 2 is on, then do something. And why not? I'm going to call my subroutine called Blinky. All right? And then I'm going to say end if. Now, just like with everything else, we have to tell JAL where this if statement starts and where it ends. And anything in between here is what it's going to do if this switch is on. So, if I was to run this program now, if I was to compile and download this program, I would start program number 1, so I would use my switches to get to program number 1, and then use the other switch to start program number 1, then this forever loop would start. Then, if I hit that switch again, switch 2, Blinky would run, and then it would stop. If I keep my finger on switch 2, Blinky is going to run over and over again. But what this does is it checks the condition of switch 2 every time it comes through on the forever loop. And if switch 2 is on, then we do Blinky. We could add something down here. We could add another conditional statement. And you need to use 2 zeros on this. That's it's again syntax in JAL. That means if switch 2 absolutely equals 0, equals is kind of an absolutely equals 0. In other words, if this switch is off, then do something else. Well, why don't we just turn our red LED on? Okay? So now, if the switch is off, the red LED will go on. Now, the thing about this one is that the red LED is going to go on once, and it's going to stay on. We can add another condition here called else. Let's grab red LED here, and we're going to turn it off. Okay? So this little additional statement now says if the switch is off, then the red LED is going to be on, else, or in other words, in any other case, the red LED is going to be off. So now the way that this program is going to work is if we push switch 2, in other words, if we turn switch 2 on, then our little blinky program is going to run. If switch 2 is off, our red LED is going to come on. In every other case, in other words, when it's on, the red LED will be off. So go ahead and play with this a little bit. You can use either switch 1 or switch 2, and remember, you have to put these things into forever loops. Otherwise, it's going to be interfering with some of this other stuff that's going on with the switches. But once you get it in the forever loop, then it's all alone, and you can play with it a lot easier, and it won't be confused that way. But go ahead and try doing different things. You could set this up if switch 2 equals 1, drive forward for 2 seconds. If it doesn't, if it's not on, drive backwards. So you would have kind of a little remote control with your robot in that case. Again, I'm very happy everybody participated in the Sheboygan College for Kids. Hopefully you weren't too frustrated with the program. If you have questions for me, I am more than happy to answer them. It doesn't matter if it's 2 days from now or a year from now or whatever. Please send me an email. My email is on the fondyheat.co.cc website, or even give me a call. I'll put my contact information there, and I really encourage you to experiment with this a lot further as we move on.